I could kill it there, but I'm not gonna. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the BroDiallo broadcast. Of course, what is it? January 29th in the year of your Lord, 2024. And I am still in the city of Chirac, state of Illinois, the sanctuary hypocrisy. You know, brothers and sisters in this city mad about people trespassing on our plantation. A little bit more of that. First, I want to know if the sound is okay. I don't really have my headphones in, but if there's issues with the sound or hearing, let me know, and I can maybe put the headphones in to deal with the background stuff. But that's what it is. I don't know if you watched last week. I'm gonna just jump in with both feet because I ain't got time. My name ain't Puffin. I ain't got time or loot to waste. I did like this unofficial commercial for these things. They have ruined my life. These vegan peanut butter M&Ms have ruined my life. Because I gave this is all I got left. And I promise for God, after today, I ain't buying no more of these things. I've gone I done gone through like a dozen of the little baggies that they sell. I done fist fought both of my sons over there. It's just, man, I've been wilding all week on these things, man. This is what I've been waiting on. Now, this is, I haven't had let me just stop dressing. But that's it. After I finish this, all I got left, what? Less than a dozen. I promise, this is all I got left. I'm not playing with y'all. After that, I'm done. Let me put this out of reach. Put it out of reach, because I don't want to be distracted. But damn, them Johns. Anyway, speaking of my son, your kids, man, it be your own people. It truly be your own people. My oldest son, and I'm just put this out here to let y'all know I'm not ashamed. My oldest son, I was sitting on the couch. My wife and I, we watched the Upshaws. It was some other show we were watching. And, we got a taste, a hankering for a hunk of black family sitcoms. In our own private homes, in our own private business. We had a hankering for more black sitcoms. And the Upshaws, they just did season 3 or 4. We watched all the Upshaws, and there was some other sitcom we were watching, but I think Upshaws is more of a serial than a sitcom. But my wife just turned to me and was like, "Hey, you remember on that old laptop I had all them bootleg copies of the Cosby Show?" I'm like, I recall you telling me you had old bootleg copies of the Cosby Show. She's like, we might as well just watch that while we look for another show to watch, in our downtime. So she went and pulled up the laptop where she had all these bootleg copies of the Cosby Show, and we watched season 1 episode, the pilot episode, and then the second one, and we watched up to wear the shirt, watching the show for a couple of weeks. And my oldest son, who don't live here, came through the door, and we on our couch, finished our dinner, relaxing. He comes upstairs and sees us watching the Cosby Show. And man, if you could see the look on his face, you think he walked in on us smoking crack. So anyway, he saw us, and then he gonna start admonishing us for watching something with Bill Cosby. And of course, I do what any real brother would do. I blame my wife, because I wouldn't have been watching if she didn't put it on the table. But anyway, I ain't ashamed. And now here we come with the slander. I don't know if the Upshaws is Tyler Perry-ish. Were you talking about low-key Tyler Perry-ish? Because I don't watch no Tyler Perry nothing. So I don't know. I haven't seen The Browns. I haven't seen any episodes of his dramas or comedies. And it's not even a boycott. It's just pure disinterest. It's not even a principled stand, because obviously I'm not above, lowbrow shit. But just lack of interest. From what little bit I have seen, my sister likes Tyler Perry movies, and she used to get the old VHS tapes of the plays and watch the VHS of the plays. And I've never been a, Tyler Perry, even though some of that shit, I've seen like some highlights of Mud Dia. That shit's kind of funny, but I think I have, what did I see? Boo! I saw Boo 1, and I think Boo 2. I saw Boo 1. And then I tried to get through Boo 2, and I had to shut that shit down. Really whack. But The Upshaws is just some good old school black sitcom plus cussing. They couldn't cuss back in the day. But it's like family sitcom. And I know it's some dry humor. But, like I said, Wanda Sykes' little dry humor kind of, it's appealing to me. And speaking of this, I watched that Mario Brothers movie, which made a lot of money, and everybody's like, this is a great movie. That movie was for shit. And I enjoy watching the Mario Brothers movie, because I was catching all the little, what they call Easter eggs. Like they had Mario had like a picture of Glass Joe. So all the old Nintendo and old video game Easter eggs, I was pointing those out. And that's about the only joy I got out of that movie. That movie was a mile a minute of nonsense. And so I was familiar with the whole woke, anti-woke discussion, where Mario was successful because it was the one movie that wasn't woke, and white nationalists and white reactionaries and white conservatives are like, Mario's woke because they didn't hamstring in or force in any characters of color. But then some people said it's not woke because Princess what was her name? The princess, she was is it Princess Peaches? The princess, she was a little too, she was being a monarch, she was ruling over the mushroom people, and she was like wearing like leather bicycle suits, and she was too assertive and too forceful, and she kind of got in the way of Mario being the masculine hero, and he wasn't necessarily there to rescue her, where instead of Mario being a hero to save the princess, he was an ally of the princess. So they said it was anti-woke, and I thought that shit was funny because Japanese people, that shit was all made up by Japanese people and their stereotypes of white folks. And now white folks in the West are like, yeah, this is us. This is a representation and traditional representation. So it is a hot suburban mess, hot Euro mess, or whatever you call it, and the controversy. But it must have been something, because as far as the quality of the movie was whack as hell. And before that, a couple of weeks ago, I saw the Buzz Lightyear movie, and my granddaughter's nickname is Izzy, and the main character under Lightyear, his co-protagonist, her name was Izzy. So then, we wanted to get like an Izzy poster and a little Izzy action figure. She's a newborn, well, not necessarily, she ain't a year old. So we want to get like one of those little Izzy action figures. But that movie was actually it was well written and well executed. And Japanese racism is ugly Italians. I don't know about Japanese racism against Italians. You ain't about to have me shed tears for how Italians have suffered of racism. Not that you're saying that, but ain't nobody. But Anyway, that movie was relatively well done, and everybody was like, it was woke and it went broke, and there was a lesbian woman in an interracial relationship. They had a daughter, a black daughter, and then all these, and then they had an elderly character in there that was my favorite. That old lady, that old thieving, shoplifting, ex-con lady. So Buzz Lightyear was a pretty well done and well executed movie that bombed because it was woke. And then we had a super shitty, overstimulated, poorly written, poorly executed movie like Mario Brothers that was the hit of the last summer because it was anti-woke. But then there are people saying that Mario was woke because the princess was too powerful and too assertive and not feminine enough. So this whole woke debate, which I'm gonna kind of go into, yeah, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I think it's kind of crazy that somebody can turn you into a grandparent without consulting you, completely against your will, just out of nowhere. You can go to bed hip, young, vibrant, virile. You can go to bed with your whole life ahead of you. You can go to bed and before you get in bed, you lay out the flyest outfit. You shine your kicks up. You brush your kicks. You can go to bed with the next day full of all exciting activities. You can go to bed after going out clubbing and kicking it. And then you can wake up that next morning a grandparent. And nobody consulted you. Nobody gave you nobody ask your permission. I don't think you should be able to just forcibly turn somebody into a grandparent. That shit is wild to me. And old folks, even my son is so fond of telling me about how old people not only run the world, but we ruin everything. So, young people don't vote. They don't worry about legislation and policy and enforcement. So as the old people, can't we propose, like, what did Willie D say? I'm proposing a bill on Capitol Hill. But instead of kill all bald-headed women at will, I'm proposing a bill on Capitol Hill to require written consent for grandparenthood. You can't just make somebody a grandparent on GP. And we could do it, and young people not going to vote. They'll make protest signs. They'll march in the streets. They might even, burn some shit down, break some corporate windows. But when election day comes, they're going to stay home. So we could do that. Now that I'm beyond reproductive age, I'm just saying, let's do it. I mean, they don't pay no attention unless it's some celebrity politician rocking the vote. So yeah, that was done to me. Nobody asked me nothing. My son came home and be like, here. And then he was like, I'm going to a rave with my girl. So, watch the baby for the weekend. And my wife, she a punk. She just whatever. Whenever he's like, oh, I need somebody to tend to the baby, she's there front and center. We should go real hood on their ass and have a baby so my granddaughter can have an uncle or a niece that's younger than her. I think we could do it. Let me talk to Dr. Mingo. Just spite. I'm going to have a spite child. And be like, oh, you want me to babysit my granddaughter? How about you babysit your little sister or brother? Yes, spite babies. I mean, of all the things I've done out of spite, that could be something that's positive. Anyway, let me stop burdening y'all. And y'all suffered enough. I'm not going to burden y'all. Y'all suffering through a beef between Nicki Minaj and Megan Thee Stallion. So I know the community is suffering right now. The community is having a lot of disarray and conflict. So I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to leave it alone. Anyway. And I'm a little high off this concentrated sugar. Man, Sabi would be so ashamed of me. Anyway, today's presentation, today's discussion, I want to open this up to the rest because this has plagued me more so than anything else, is irrationality. And I know irrationality is a way to talk about menticide without talking about menticide. It's a way to kind of distill down menticide because of anything I've tried to do in the context of liberation, revolution, organizing, advancing the interest of African people, or subverting the interest or subverting the agendas of the enemies of African people, one of the biggest obstacles has been irrationality, which is really another way to say menticide, or really irrationality is a symptom of menticide. But to me, it's one of the most blatant symptoms, one of the most impassable, one of the most present, forward-facing thing. And I'd say this all the time. Menticide is the greatest threat to African people. And people don't go far enough to understand that the purpose and outcome of menticide is the eventual extirpation of the people who suffer from menticide. People cannot survive as a people under the condition of menticide and oppression. These things are terminal. And I wanted to call today's show Terminal Stupidity. But I'm always getting people getting in my grill for being don't want to say mean, because people then will claim they don't care about me being mean, and but I get people being insensitive, being, too much controversy, saying things that in the wrong way, not using the kindest words. I used to have chairman, the chair of the National Black United Front would always get on me for using profanity. Literally take me to the side and talk to me about using profanity. And he would try to he was a very, very skilled leader. So he wouldn't come and be like, man, don't be coming in here with all that cussing and shit. He would say, brother, you're so articulate. You're so well read. I think that you are too articulate and insightful to be using profanity. So he was using compliments to get me to stop doing something. And I would say to him, Chairman, Brother Ajama, how do I describe or discuss profane and obscene things without using profane and obscene language? And if something is fucked up, saying something is unjust, something is imbalanced, something is unfair, to me, does not articulate or translate to really understand that something is fucked up. And I've been fighting this battle. I didn't know how deep this shit went. Where we want to not just use flowery language, but insist everybody else use this sanitized language. So even genocide, genocide is back. Remember before, it was white folks, white on white violence. Before it was Ukrainians. People were saying ethnic cleansing. They even tried to whitewash genocide and call it ethnic cleansing. We let them whitewash genocide in the United States. They whitewashed concentration camps, and they were able to call them reservation. Native Americans live on the reservation, not concentration camps. Black people are being gentrified, but now they're saying in Israel they're being displaced. There's being genocide, but here we're not. But when you look at the white folks' definition of genocide, they say genocide is not just killing people, it's displacing, moving people out of their homes and community, creating conditions under which people cannot reproduce themselves or sustain themselves. Right? Calling invaders settlers. So anyway, I've been trying to find a middle road, and I'm struggling. So I was typing this thing up and be like, terminal stupidity, how irrationality is going to get us killed. Well, the real title was Terminal Stupidity, Menticide in the Information Age. That was the name of it. Terminal Stupidity, Menticide in the Information Age. But then I'm like, these long ass titles that are not only offensive, but long. And I can't get more than 100 views. Nobody share my shit. People coming to me and be like, I didn't know you went live. I didn't get a notification. And so I'm like, well, let me do things the way people do. I'll shorten the title and I'll try to make it less offensive. Because if I say rationality rules, and then people like, I'm not part of the ruler class, and I think I'm a rational person, so I can get on here and talk about folks to their face, and they thinking I'm talking about everybody but them. Y'all. So I didn't call it terminal stupidity, but I'm telling on myself. I really think it's terminal stupidity. And I'm going to get into why. Again, the subtitle would be, in Irrationality Rules, irrationality is extremely dangerous. It is a symptom or outcome or product of menticide. Menticide, and you would think, wow, how can these things be that dangerous? How can these things be more deadly than bombs and guns and toxic waste? But anti-academic, anti-analytical, and ahistorical. And these are pretty innocuous things. Like if somebody says, hey, you're anti-academic, some people wouldn't even get offended at that, let alone think it's something that could lead to their premature death or the destruction of their people in whole or in part. I'm anti-analytical. What the fuck is that? And I say all the time, look at the motherfucking Kobe versus LeBron debate. Not Kobe versus LeBron, forgive me. LeBron versus Jordan debate. Just really think to yourself, brothers especially, the amount of passion, effort that goes, how brothers will quote you stats, brothers will bring up a game, the playoffs of 1987. They know the owners, they know the general managers, they know the nutritional plan and the workout regiment, they know the post-workout, they know the athletes' interpersonal relationships in the streets and how their interpersonal relationship might stress. They know they'll talk to you about the chemistry of the team and the chemistry between Jordan and how bringing Pippen in, not Pippen, Rodman, bringing Rodman in, and Rodman going from a more conservative dude on the surface to letting his inner freak out. And, Rodman did a photo shoot in a wedding dress before the playoffs, and how is that going to affect the team's chemistry? And people, the level of analysis and critique and the willingness and enthusiasm for debate, it blows my fucking mind. It fucking blows my fucking mind. I hear it everywhere I go. Go to my uncle's house, go to barbershop. I even went to what they call that shit, a sugar plum party. My wife took me to a friend of hers had a sugar plum party, and I said, and basically is a dessert party where everybody is just desserts and wine and nothing else. And I said, will there be vegan items there, vegan cakes and treats? And she said no. And I'm like, then I'm not going. And then she's like, fine, I'll make sure there's vegan shit there. So I went there and had some vegan shit. But even at a sugar plum party, it don't get more girly than there. Every dude there was there with his wife, drug out by his wife. Well, I don't know what promises. I sold out for some vegan sugar, vegan cake, cupcakes. I don't know what other brothers had to do, what them other women had to do to get their men out. I come cheap. I'm a cheap date. But even in that, they weren't talking about the Jordan, but they just talking about the Bears. Apparently the Bears had just lost a pivotal game or some shit. But the amount and depth and passion that goes into this debate. And then you talk about motherfuckers writing policy for us. Now, if I went somewhere and said, ain't no difference between Jordan and LeBron. They the same. They play in the same league. They both rich bald head hoes. Is LeBron bald head? Nah, I gotta see. Give me a moment. He's not bald head. Why you always talking about his hairline and stuff? Huh. Oh, he had male pattern baldness. And then he must have got like a hair transplant. Because he was definitely, he had a hair transplant. Yep. Damn, the amount of articles. Wow, they showing the surgical scars. So he had a hair transplant. So, you know, if I came into a barbershop, came to the barbecue, came to the motorcycle where the guys get together and rev up their motorcycles, and my homie who used to really ride, Jamal, used to call them kickstand riders. Dudes would buy these fancy bikes and then go to a gas station or somewhere in the park and just park their bikes and stand around their bikes while he was up in the woods doing 120 to 200 miles up and down these long strips. Now, me personally, if I had a motorcycle, I would be a kickstand rider too. I would walk the bike somewhere and lean it and flex on it with the leather and the patches and the boots and just lean on that shit. I'm like, you telling me they the idiots? And you the smart dude? Because I saw you up in a fucking Smithville, Missouri, doing 200 miles outrunning them racist ass cops in Smithville, rural Missouri. And you think you're the real one and they the idiots? But that's another discussion. Shout out to Jamal. But if I walked anywhere and said, there's no difference between LeBron and Jordan, right? Cats would jump down my throat. In fact, I'm going to just try it. Ain't no difference between LeBron and Jordan. Ain't no difference between the Chiefs and the Bears. But in the same thing, the motherfuckers who rule us, who govern us, who dominate us, who oppress us, Democrats and Republicans. I could be like, ain't no difference between Democrats and Republicans. And nobody will challenge me. And I, whom several times said there are distinct differences between Democrats and Republicans. And we need to acknowledge those differences. And I had written this short little synopsis saying, listen, when Trump lost the election and Biden won, I'm like, these are the things that are going to be effectively different. This is the different approach that Biden administration, the neoliberal Biden administration versus the traditional overt racist fascist Trump administration. And people are like, ain't no difference. And that's scary to me. To me, that's menticide. To me, that's menticide. If you were a CIA agent involved in setting up the apparatus, the economic hitman, setting up the apparatus to oppress the whole fucking world, and you walked into Langley, Virginia, CIA headquarters, and said, ain't no difference between Nigerians and Kenyans. They just all Africans. We hate them all, right? Ain't no difference between Crips and Bloods or GDs and BDs. You would be fired. They were like, you're not qualified to do this job. It ain't got nothing to do about love or appreciation. But if you're going to combat, if you have a fucking enemy, ain't no difference between the infantry. Ain't no difference between the infantry and the mounted troops. Ain't no difference between the Navy and the Marines and the fucking Green Berets and the SEALs. Ain't no difference. You're fucked. And it's to the point where I get in trouble. People are like, oh, he's a hidden Democrat. And I tell you, I ain't no shame in my game. Just like I sat here and confessed to watching bootleg copies of The Cosby Show after I was a pioneer and innovator, player hater of Bill Cosby. My Cosby hate goes back decades, and I stand on that. I will confess. If I was a Democrat, or if I favored the Democrats, or if I supported Democrats, I would say it. The fuck I gotta lie for? But that is evidence of menticide when we put so much effort, and I always fantasize. Let me tell y'all something. I'll put down the shades, turn off the lights, check and make sure ain't nobody else home, and I'll go get me some shea butter, and I'd get under the covers and close my eyes and fantasize about brothers giving as much critique, analysis, following the stats, looking at the key players, understanding the leadership, the hierarchy, who's in control. If brothers gave as much analysis to geopolitics, to the machinations of the elites and the oppressors and the capitalist classes they gave to fucking basketball. I ain't even gonna even throw in the NFL. I fantasize about that shit. I listen to these brothers, man, they be saying shit I could never recall. I don't know what the fucking RBI is. Been hearing it all my life. Who's got an RBI? What the fuck? I can't tell you what the fuck that is. I know field goal average. I think I know what that is. But they be knowing these numbers and stats for all these fucking players. And they literally be like, well, you know, the 80s Bulls versus the 2000 Bulls and how that would go. And you never see they say, well, look at the 80s or the 60s revolutionary struggles and the revolutionary struggles of the early 2000s. Runs batted in. I still don't know what the fuck that means. But anyway, that's what I'm a fucking weirdo. But I conclude that this is a byproduct of Menticide. This is mental-sidal behavior. And again, I'm not a square. Let me tell you something. I have my curriculars, my extracurriculars. I have shit that I'm into, shit that I like to do, and shit I know way too much about that don't mean nothing to nobody. I would put my knowledge of Golden Era, Marvel, or 40K lore up against any nerd or geek out there. I know way too much about the Primarchs and the Horus Heresy. You know, I'll put my, you know, I'll sit and enjoy. I have my outlets. You know. And shit I know. And I ain't saying you can't know about it, but if you're gonna put energy into that shit, it blows my mind. I think we need to start calling motherfuckers out on it. It frightens me that in my community that we can understand the differences between the various franchises in the NBA, and we will debate those differences and we will follow those differences, and we won't even acknowledge it's the difference between the various white factions that oppress us. And you can understand, I will critique and acknowledge that there's a difference between the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs. I can admonish or admire how those two teams are structured. And at the exact same time, I could hope they both fucking lose because I'm a fucking Colorado fan or I'm a Green Bay fan. So if somebody says, well, I think the Chiefs are a better run and better structured franchise than the Cowboys, you must be a Chiefs fan. We fully understand that you could think that, conclude that, and even watch their fucking games and still be a fucking Green Bay Packers fan and hope both teams lose. But if I say, well, no, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the right-wing fascists and the neoliberals, there's a difference between the neocons and the neoliberals. There's a difference between the corporatist and the libertarian isolationist. And these various white factions do have conflicts with each other. White people are not a unified race of people. Their power does not grow out of their unification. You must be a Democrat. Or if I say Biden is a Jim Crow genocidal fucking piece of shit, I'll never vote for Biden. Oh, so you want Trump to be in? Even though the vast majority of elections I voted in, it's always more than two options for president. And just about every single election since I've been old enough to vote, I'm not going to speak before that, but every election that I've been old enough to vote, the majority of people eligible to vote for nobody. It's like Gil Scott-Heron said, if nobody gets the majority of the vote, then nobody should be president. because the people have essentially elected nobody. And whoever nobody is, step up and take the office. There have been elections where people have taken office with less than 8, 9, 10, single digits of the majority of eligible voters. On average, when I go to vote here locally on the south side of Chicago, not just president, aldermanic elections, various policy referendums, the voter turnout will be in the low teens, single digits or the low teens. And please sit here and come and tell me voting don't make no difference, because then I'll sit and tell you who wins the Super Bowl makes less of a difference than who wins a local election. And y'all fucking engage with the Super Bowl till the day the Super Bowl gets fewer ratings or a smaller percentage of the turnout than an election. Then I'll be like, okay, y'all real with this shit. But I agree that local elections are very different than state, and that are also very different than national elections. I totally agree. But the stats don't show that people are showing up for local and statewide elections and just neglecting national elections. And if you go and vote on a national election, you still have local representatives on that ballot and local ballot issues on that ballot. So if somebody want to go in and vote everything and leave president blank, that ain't how they do. But anyway, let's talk about this, because this is another component of that irrationality. I hear a lot of people on several issues talk about, but let's go down the list and then maybe we'll come back up to that. I'm going to go so far as to say, in the year 2024, in the modern era, irrationality, or the inability or unwillingness to think critically is the modern day equivalent of illiteracy. Humans have all but overcome illiteracy. I looked it up, so I ain't pulling this out of the air or out of my memory. Back in 1820, just 200 years ago, give or take, the global literacy rate was 12%. Was 12%. The vast majority of human beings could not read. And when you couple that also with travel, most people were born and died within a 5-mile radius. They never learned to read. They never learned a foreign language. They had very few, unless their country went to war, they had no opportunities to travel outside of their limited range and interact with people from different parts of the world, unless some slavers came and captured you. European, Christian, or Arab, Islamic slavers came and dragged you to another part of the world, or some tyrant or king declared war for some stupid petty reason and shipped your ass abroad. But vast majority of humans couldn't read, did not interact with various or different cultures or races. In fact, if you could get an Asian or an African or a pigeon, or get hold of a warthog or some animal that's just maybe lives 200, 300, 400 miles away, you could take that person or that animal and go to the various villages and be like, look at this exotic animal. And you caught the fucking animal 200 miles to the south, and you bring it 200 miles north, and people be like, wow, what a wondrous creature, because people didn't travel. And in 200 years, through technology, through cooperative work, we have changed that, where anyone who has the desire and resources can be anywhere on the planet in under 48 hours. I said desire and resources. I ain't missed that. I should say resources and desires, because the resources are more important than the desire. Or even more wondrous, we all have supercomputers in our back pocket that can translate language. We're doing this project with Friends of the Congo, this fundraising project, and I'm creating some items for Friends of the Congo to sell to raise funds for their efforts. And I wanted to know certain words from the Congolese languages and cultures for solidarity and things. And I was able to just pull up archaeological and linguistic history of the Congo and Congolese people. When before I'd have to go to some big library and go through dusty books and inhale all these fibers into my lungs. So humanity has overcome illiteracy, and now the global literacy rate is about 87%. In 200 years, you jump from 12% literacy amongst humans to 87% literacy. And in the so-called developed nations, I don't like the term developed nation. That's another whitewashed world. And the colonizer nations, because every so-called first world nation is either a colonizer or a proxy or allied with colonizers. You know, so Switzerland gets to walk around and say, well, we did not colonize anyone, but Switzerland is where the fucking colonizers put all the gold they stole. And the Nazi gold. And Congolese gold. And Ghanaian gold. And Guyana gold. And Brazilian gold. So even the white nations that are the Dutch and those countries that's like, we never colonized. We never invade. We didn't do none of that shit. Then they were the fucking bankers. They were the arms manufacturers. They were the resorts and respites. So the first world, stop saying the developed nations and say the colonizer nations, the parasitic nations. Their literacy rate is about 99% on average. They almost have complete literacy. Right? Except for the United States. The United States has like 70% literacy. United States has the highest illiteracy rates of the colonizer nations. And if it's not a colonizer nation, the nation is a settler colony nation. So Great Britain is a colonizer. United States is a settler colony. Portugal is a colonizing nation. Brazil is a settler colony. South Africa, settler colony. Israel, settler colony. But anyway, it's respectable. All right. It's a respectable number. So literacy is gone. So how the fuck, when everybody has the capacity to read, are people dumber now than they were before? When I was an undergrad for political science, shout out to Dr. Dima. I had a Nigerian political science professor, and that man tried to give me carpal tunnel syndrome because he would have us write. He'd tell us to bring 3-4 blue books. Oh man, memory lane. Remember those blue? I don't know if they do that now. Like my son, not my son that's in college, my younger son, I never see a textbook. And my son was like, oh yeah, I've heard of a book. Because everything's fucking on computer. He has like a tablet and a computer. Like, I never see a fucking textbook come home. But anyway. What was I talking about? Don't get me started on it. Oh, literacy. Because I lost that point. So let's all just abandon it. In the literacy rate in the United States, and we've almost completely destroyed illiteracy. And in a time of almost blanket literacy, people are dumber than fucking ever. Oh, I was going to tell you this story, Dr. Dima. I knew it was going to come back to me. Dr. Dima used to have us bring these blue books. And most of his exams were handwritten essays where he would have these questions or ask for your insights on something and you had to write it out. I still have a couple of those things. And it wasn't no simple answer. But anyway, he brought to class one day an exam from, it was a political science class. So he brought a civics exam and passed it out. And we're all 4th year political science students. Everybody in that classroom, 4th years, and I was on track to graduate with honors. And he passed it out to all. Bang, 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 here. And we look at this exam, and it's like Xerox, 1,000,001 times, and it's faded, but you can make out. And those questions, the essay questions, the multiple choice questions, and I'm like, what is this? Graduate level? What the fuck is this? And it was literally like a 5th grade civics exam that we, it was years ago, late 90s, early 2000s, students would have trouble passing. We would have trouble passing that shit. And then he showed us, he collects things. He's a professor, so you know his old dusty house. Let me not say nothing. He might pop up. Mr. He used to call me a Marxist. And I never told him I was a Marxist, but every time I opened my mouth, he would just be like, here could the Marxist. And he used to love calling me Mr. Jefferson, Mr. Jefferson. Every Nigerian I know likes to call me Mr. Jefferson. You know, I'm going to join ADOS. The next time a Nigerian, talking to you, Sheun, refers to me as Mr. Jefferson, I'm going to join ADOS and get all of y'all out of here. Let me stop playing. People like to clip shit, take shit out of context. But anyway, and so then he showed us one of the poll exams and would give us these exams that black men, because women weren't eligible, white women and the black man, we got to vote before the white woman. You know, can you imagine Karen sitting at home with her husband? Like, you gave the colored man, you gave that beast the right to vote. You know how many black men were accosted and lied on by white women because we got the vote before them? I digress. And the poll exam that you had to take this test and pass. And I'm just saying the rigor that people had to go through back then, and when literacy was less than half of what it is now. But anyway, if you go back and you look at the international surveys in the 1970s and the 1960s, the United States had the best public school system in the world. They had some of the highest reading, math, and scores. Even the colored schools, even the Jim Crow schools. United States used to be, at the same time, United States was head of industry, was the most industrious nation. Now, of course, half the world was colonized, and the majority of the world was colonized, and the small percentage of the world that wasn't colonized had just fought 2 world wars on their soil. So they're United States, again, just like white folks, mediocre as fuck, but got a head start. So it ain't that the United States was so ahead, it's just everybody else was so far behind. There's the difference. You know, you can win a race because you're the fastest, or you can win a race because everybody's the slowest. And there's a difference. So anyway, and the U.S. educational system was a byproduct of nutritional programs, New Deal welfare, social welfare, and public welfare policies, and the fact that the rest of the world was going through colonization, decolonization, and then as the United States started to decline as the rest of the world, you had these things of free trade and overseas industries, because with that formal education, U.S. workers fought for safety standards and income guarantees and benefits and paid vacation and whoop, whoop, whoop. And they were like, well, let's go just set up industries overseas where we can still exploit labor. And then, you know, fuck the American worker. And we need the federal government to change the import-export policies and come up with these free trade zones and most favored nation status so that we can, and so then there was really no economic incentive to have an intelligent thinking workforce. And that's not all I'm getting into. I'm just talking about how the literacy rate, I got these little gnats that I had to find out which one of these plants. But anyway, so all that to say, United States and we who dwell here in the belly of the beast, US ain't us, but we here. That now that literacy is taken for granted, if you meet someone and you find out they can't read, you're taken aback. You know, I got homies who didn't even graduate high school, and they read. They just know literacy is just something we take for granted, to the point where people don't even bother reading. It's just, I once read a meme that said, if people had the ability to fly, we'd never do it, because we'd see it as exercise. Because we have the ability to walk and run, and we seldom want to walk or run anywhere. So if we got the ability to fly inherently, it'd be something in terms of fly independent of planes, and we never do it. So we have the ability to read, we take it for granted. But in this time, being able to read doesn't really mean shit. Being able to look at letters on a page and interpret what those symbols and letters mean don't mean shit. Where's my kerchief? Oh, I'm a kerchief man now. I am a man. I'm bringing, so if you see people, I'm a man of, I'm a sophisticated, I'm a grandpa now, so I carry handkerchiefs with me. But anyway, we are deluged by information, right? And if you are not able to competently process, analyze, critique that information that comes at you at all hours in all directions, you are functionally illiterate in the modern world. Because now the modern world, literacy is not simply being able to read words on a page. Literacy is the capacity to process an enormous amount of unrelenting information that is trying to move you psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, and materially, trying to move you in a direction, trying to either stop you from acting or get you to act in a certain way. And it's unrelenting from all sides, and it's insidious. And illiterate people of the past, right? Illiterate people of the past were dependent on the literate for instruction and to interpret written word for them. Now, the most common especially in the Dark Ages, the most literate people were the monarchs and their offspring, the elites, and the people of the clergy. And most of the craftsmen, the cobblers, the ship makers, the woodsmen, the hunters, they would learn not from someone writing down the techniques and skills. They would just learn through apprenticeships. But to understand the king's decree, the king makes a decree, or the pope, the papal states make a decree, and then some man would come to the town square, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, and tell everybody, and people had to take their word for it. That's what the king wants you to do, this or wants you to stop doing this. Now this is blasphemy. Well, it was cool yesterday, but if you do it tomorrow, we're gonna cut out your tongue. And they had to have that explained and interpreted for them. And then the illiterate masses would go amongst each other. They would go amongst each other and debate what this person told them. But they think they're debating the issue when you're not fucking debating the issue. You're just debating what this man told you. And he could be right or wrong. He could be correct. He could have told you only a section of it, or told you the wrong thing on purpose because he wants your tongue cut out so he could take your land. He wants you, say the king says that you can now work on the Sabbath. The Pope says that you can now work on the Sabbath. And the king says you now may hunt in the royal woods and take 3 venison a week. And that could be a fucking lie, but the man has a scroll and he sounds official and he's a reader. Dr. John Henry Clark said literacy was so rare in that time, Dark Ages Europe, that people would be called the reader. There was a man, Peter the Reader, Nicholas the Reader, because if you could read, that was your whole fucking identity. So that would be your surname, Reader. It was like a supernatural skill. But anyway, and then you go out there and hunt a venison, or you work on the Sabbath, and you're deemed a heretic, or you're deemed a traitor, and you're executed. And then the man who lied and read that scroll to you and told you the wrong shit on purpose, he'd come in and take your shit. Now, in the modern era where everybody can fucking read, but not everybody thinks critically, not everybody can interpret, not everybody has the discernment. So now we can read for ourselves, but we still depend on motherfuckers to kind of tell us, and they lie to us for the same reason. And it's mostly billionaires, multimillionaires, multimedia conglomerates. So you're like, well, I could read New York Times article myself. And I read the article and it says, well, migrants, Venezuelan migrants, conflict at the border, Republican governor versus Democratic administration, and razor wire. Oh, and then I look and it's like, oh, terrorists coming across the border, terrorists threatened, the migrant crisis, illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, and all these terms, you can read them motherfuckers, you can spell them, you can write them, you can look them up, but you don't know what the fuck is going on. So we got black people in Chicago listening to people like Dr. Fubar Johnson, the clown prince of pan-clownism, will sit there and like, they bringing the immigrants here to replace us. But why is there an immigrant crisis? Where the fuck are the immigrants coming and why don't they stay home? And I've yet to see, I could be wrong. But the United States, the Venezuelan immigrants, the United States has fought more than a 2-decade war against the Bolivarian Revolution, has committed coups d'etats, has enacted illegal blockades, and has economic hitmen, carried out the economic hitman. They have armed gangs. They have rerouted the cartel drug trade through Venezuela. They have engaged in direct hostile incursions and indirect proxy conflicts and warfare and destabilize. The United States government and intelligence agencies has been on a multi-decade campaign to destabilize Venezuela. Because Venezuela has two problems. Number one, it has a lot of fucking oil, which already puts you in the fucking scope of the United States, but then it had a socialist revolution. And has a socialist leadership, the Bolivarian Revolution from Hugo Chavez and Maduro. They had socialist-leaning parties, and these are people who simply concluded that the wealth of Venezuela will go to and be distributed amongst the citizens of Venezuela. The wealth of Venezuela will not be sold to the lowest bidder multinational corporation. And that was their only sin. So through that destabilization, people So they made Venezuela unlivable. A country that if you just look at Venezuela in 2015, that had the highest standard and the most rapidly improving standard of living in all of South America. And Obama tried to overthrow them. And then they were under attack from the Trump administration. And so the people are like, well, as anyone would do, you break what it motherfucking, what's his name? Colin Powell. There's a Colin Powell High School, literally naming black schools after international war crimes. Colin Powell said, if you break it, you bought it. They were talking to him about U.S. incursions into Iraq and Afghanistan. And he said, one of the most wicked black men that ever walk on 2 feet. I'm going to say what Del Jones said. When Colin Powell was born, his mother looked at him and said, I'm going to name you Colin because I know you full of shit. Even his own mama knew what was to become. But so they attack him, say, oh, you're a state sponsor of terrorism. Your leaders are your elected leaders who got a higher percentage of the vote than the U.S. president. Say that, and so then people, you break it, you bought it. Just like everybody else. I always tell every fucking black person who's xenophobic black idiot or some racist white xenophobe, if you are anti-immigrant, be anti-imperialism. Everybody that's showing up at the shores of America is being brought here through U.S. imperialism. And they have every motherfucking right to be here, according to the white folks' laws and according to basic human dignity. If I went next door and set fire to my neighbor's house and they come running over here and I lock my door, I've committed my second crime. But I digress. But people just like, they come in here and they could be terrorists. Same thing with the Hondurans. You name the country, Haiti, same thing. So that's why you can go on and read the New York Times. You can go and pull the phone, the supercomputer that's in your pocket, and Google migrant crisis, refugees, tent cities, terrorists. You can Google this shit, read this shit, and be dumber than if you had just ignored it altogether. We are in the brave new world. Everybody's been talking about 1984. Government tyranny is so, and I'm gonna have to say this. I know I'm gonna get in trouble. I know I'm gonna get in motherfucking trouble. When people in the United States talk a lot of shit, what did Lord Jermaine always throwing a fit, want to talk a lot of shit. People in the United States, we throw words around. We throw words around. And again, we don't like to discuss the particulars. We don't like to just get into details because we are oppressed. Lord knows black people in the United States are oppressed. But then when we say there's degrees to this shit, and you got to understand the degrees. So when we look at the Brave New World, the Brave New World is a book about an oppressive state, but the people celebrated the implementation of the Brave New World. Whereas 1984, the people resented and were aware that they were oppressed. The people were like, yeah, we have to do this doublespeak. The government is oppressing us. The state is oppressing us. The institutions that are over our lives are control us. And if we ever had the ability or had the opportunity to get these motherfuckers off of us, we would. Listen, you're not in, okay. We are not in Mad Max. Nope. Not, depending on where you are. DC, if you, where you at, DC? But so the main difference is, hey, there are tyrannical regimes that the people see as the savior. When the tyrannical oppressive policies come down, people embrace them. Like Hitler. Hitler was voted in. Hitler was embraced, and people saw Hitler as he was going to make Germany great again. Where you have other rulers that come in, right? That when they kick in the door, when they come to power, people say they come to power through force, and the people understand that they are under a dictatorial, oppressive regime. Like in Haiti, the Duvalier regimes, Papa and Baby Doc. The masses of the people pretty much understood. Or what's that motherfucker's name in El Modelo? I can't remember his name. But anyway, so in some regimes, the wicked leadership comes in as a savior. In other oppressive regimes, come in by force, and the people realize it's forced and it's oppressive from day one. There's never this honeymoon period like, oh, we're so happy, right? And so we're in the brave new world. And in 1984, the people were controlled through censorship. People were controlled through censorship, being denied access to information, being denied understanding, being denied the right and ability to express themselves or articulate themselves. So they were, one of the forms of controlling thinking and action was through censorship. In the Brave New World, the way they controlled thinking and action was through saturation. So you have censorship where they limit your information, and you have saturation where they overload you with information. everywhere you look. They're hitting you from every direction. And you're able to say whatever the fuck you want, and everybody's able to say whatever the fuck they want, and everybody's screaming at the exact same time. And saturation and censorship done successfully have the same outcome. You have mass irrationality, mass delusion, mass maladaptation, and mass misunderstanding and ignorance. And what people tend to do when they know they're in a system that has censorship, in a system that actively censors information, Saudi Arabia, they tend to just tune out. It's like, I don't really read the paper, I don't watch the news, I don't pay attention to that shit because I know it's government control. Where here, when your information is saturated, when your telephone, your TV, your computer, your friends and your influencers and everybody around you is trying to sell you something and tell you, NFTs and all in your shit, people start to go numb and they start to ignore or dismiss. Oh, that ain't shit. They just trying to sell something. They just trying to make money. So it's the same outcome. It's two different methods to have the same outcome. But the people who are under saturation believe they have freedom of speech. They believe they are informed. And they really start to scapegoat. They scapegoat. So when I have a problem in my life, I'm going to blame everybody except the source of that problem. Whereas people under censorship and under more, and this is the old way of doing things, they tend to understand, it's the state, it's this ruling family, it is this particular, the Stasi, the secret police, these motherfuckers are the bad fucking guys. And that's why many of the Western colonial powers, many of the white dominant, the corporate entities, and the government has chosen to employ the saturation method. You have freedom of speech. BroDiallo's out there. We can let 1 million BroDiallos come. He ain't nobody gonna pay attention to him. But Cat Williams, 100 million views in 2 hours. You can choose. You can read any book you want outside of Florida. And the people are like, I ain't reading at all. There's books everywhere. Oh, who gives a fuck? I remember I was in Palestine before the latest, and I hate how everybody act like the genocide started just in October 7th. We dealing with an ongoing genocide, and where white folks say, well, we're going to have accelerated genocide or slow genocide, but it's going to be genocide. And the people's like, we can't do this slow genocide anymore. Let's expose it. We're not going to let you pretend to be a democratic country of freedom and rights while you're killing us all. And everybody's like, oh, we got to stop the genocide. And what many people are calling for is a return to the status quo. What they don't want to end to the genocide, they want plausible deniability of genocide. We call for a ceasefire, and I don't understand calling for a ceasefire and not calling for a cease to Zionism. Because Zionism is killing and taking land, whether they're firing or not. They were stealing lands without firing a shot. They were sending John Deere bulldozers. There was a whole campaign to boycott John Deere because they were selling these land movers. And they were like, they don't have any large-scale agriculture to justify sending these giant vehicles over to Israel. So the only reason they could have for sending these vehicles to Israel is to clear out Palestinian homes. And they done took over 90% of the country. And people act like this shit started a few months ago. We talking about how the fuck we got all this information, all this access to information, and relatively low consequences for engaging with the information, and don't nobody know. So I will say this one more time. The new illiteracy is the lack of the ability to process and interpret information. And there's two ways to do it: by shutting it all down and coming to these conclusions. They're all the same. Ain't no difference between Bezos and Meta and Amazon. Oh, it's just all the same, just corporations. Oh, ain't no Democrats, Republicans. It's all politics. It's all the same. That's one way. You just shut down. Another way is you engage it and you come out on the wrong fucking side. There are so many conscious, revolutionary, pro-black people who have reactionary assessments of the facts and the data. We're family values. We got family values, motherfucking right-wing family value people claiming they're revolutionary. And I ain't heard from these people, but there are several black folks that I have directly engaged and debated, some of our leaders, and I think y'all need to speak the fuck up, who were talking about abortion is the new genocide. These motherfuckers out here putting up billboards in the black community. The most dangerous place for a black child is inside the womb of a black woman. And we're under genocide. Abortion is genocide. So now abortion has been outlawed. And even in the place where abortion is legal in the United States, it's harder and harder to access. There are clinics that service areas over miles and miles. And in places like Texas, there are tens of thousands of forced births that have happened since the repeal of Roe v. Wade. And where are these motherfuckers? Is the genocide over for black people? Has any of the negative impacts of white hegemony and capitalism been reversed as a result of denying African women access or to abortion? Where the fuck are the black anti-abortionists now? They've gone fucking silent. They're ignoring the injuries and deaths of women and children as a result. Where the fuck are they? And it really fucks me up. Like I had a cousin who was really into fucking Bitcoin, and he was and it's a few things. He likes to come online and promote, oh, I got this truck, I got this shit, and I'm doing this, I'm making all this money. And then when the bottom drops out, he disappears. And my thing is, if you're gonna talk about the good, you got to talk about the bad. If I come on here and say the veganism is the greatest thing in the world, and then some peer-reviewed research nutritionist comes out and say, well, veganism is fucked up. And I'm like, man, veganism fucked up. I made a bad mistake. I've been doing this shit since 1992 and I'm all fucked up in the game. And then I just go silent instead of coming out and being as forceful and denouncing what you promoted when you found out it was the wrong thing. Right? So, if you in 2024 do not have and fully engage, it's not enough to just be critical in your thinking. You have to be radical, meaning you have to understand the source. If you're talking about the immigrant crisis, if you're talking about poverty in the black community, if you're talking about any issue, and you are just looking at the symptoms or the surface, the violence, if you're just looking at the symptoms or the surface and not getting to and not having a, you are no different than an illiterate person, a person who couldn't look at letters on a page and interpret them years, because now the new literacy is being able to interpret the deluge of information and come up with the critical and accurate conclusions and understandings and so forth. And let me tell you, black people, we're not the only people who have mass irrationality and mass delusions. When white people engage with mass irrationality, they become genocidal and homicidal. When black people engage with mass irrationality, we become suicidal because we don't control the means of production. We don't control the infrastructure of the state. We don't control the military. So when we engage with mass irrationality, we become reactionary and maladaptive. When white folks get on the mass irrationality, they become homicidal and suicidal. But hold on, I gotta give me a second. If I don't get this done, I'm gonna have a brief intermission, and I'll be right back. Where is it? Oh, Jesus. Oh, this is it. Let me just put this on. I'll be right back.
Gao. Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today.
See, all I gotta be is what Jack said I was. So I don't give a bill about no buzz. I am about freedom. I never mind the chickens of the club. I will live and die for the cause just because. If I don't, I wonder who will. Y'all place value on your wheels and your automobiles and never acknowledge your children's diminishing skills or that they continue to fill all the prisons they build. My life is all God gave me to kill. I want us to be free, but y'all would really rather I chill. Water blood and the slaughter is water and killing fields. You chopping and shucking, she stripping and sucking for the bills. All for the love, for the bread, cheese dough. Sell pills, we blow, let pistols go. Got coke from the country's gay crack to the Pope. And the government responds to it, just say no. Freedom fighting for the love they selling now on the low. And a man ain't fit to live without something he died for. I'm in his trunk with the rifle like I'm Lee Malvo. Y'all want a Sambo, well I'm Skip Rambo. Jordans and camo, white tees and ammo. Put the freedom in the kick snare and the sample. I'm Rambo. Put the freedom in the kick snare and the sample. Fuck it, then I'm.
All right. Oh, thank you, Skip. Sorry, I had to go send this message. I should have sent it before I went on. Okay, it's good. I had to go send something off to the contractor. Make sure he was on deck for tomorrow. Sorry, I just got to get my affairs in order. Anyway, let me talk about. That's all I want to say. Right? I now want to talk about areas where menticide or the irrationality manifests itself in some ways. And then I want to open the discussion. Somebody said I'm all over the place. Who said that? I thought I was pretty cogent. I thought I stayed on mission, on program. Yeah, that was Skip. Wait a minute. Somebody said I was all over the place tonight. Anyway, I want to talk about some areas where this manifests, menticide manifests. And I don't know, maybe some solutions. I don't know. I've been... Damn. I thought I could get the first part down to an hour. You said I'm all... Lead said You said, who said I'm all over the place tonight? I thought, like, but whatever. I'm going to just start to ignore the comments. Y'all be trying to bring me down. Anyway, some of the areas where irrationality rules, where we... Because, again, if at the beginning of the show, I said one of the biggest obstacles to getting anything done is irrationality. And irrationality has been a bigger, and we have a lot of things where, you know, the reactionaries in our community, what's the problem? The feminization of the black man. I think that's starting to come back. That rears its ugly head. And infantilization is more of a problem than, but that's to suggest that feminization is a problem at all. But the feminization of the black man, we don't know our history. We don't have money. We're cowards. You know, we don't have that knowledge, but more so than anything, in terms of intellectual, psychological, it's irrationality. And one of the places in the larger black community is this whole celebrity culture. Everybody critiques celebrity culture. Everybody is against it. And like I said last week about unity, how is everybody against something, but it's prominent? I mean, can you meet an adult that says, yes, I am a full participant and I fully embrace and love celebrity culture. I live vicariously through celebrities. And these same guys out here that's like, yeah, you know, these celebrities, we focus too much on these celebrities, and these celebrities are distraction, right? And then you turn around and they got a girl dad tattoo and a Kobe jersey tattooed on their other arm. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. So one of the places where irrationality rules is in this celebrity thing. And I feel compelled to explain to you what a celebrity truly is. Celebrity culture is not about someone's talent. It's not even about their fame. Because there are a lot of famous people who are not celebrities. There are a lot of talented people, artists who are not celebrities. And then you have people in the most mundane professions politicians who are celebrities, bureaucrats. How is a bureaucrat a celebrity? It seems to be mundane. So what makes someone a celebrity within a community or a culture is that they are the living embodiment of the aspirations of that community. So celebrities are more of a reflection on us. Even though the celebrities sell us products and they are trendsetters, the celebrities are created and sustained through understanding the delusions, the desires, the drives, and the aspirations of the people they are celebrities for. There are certain people that are super famous amongst other groups and unknown amongst other groups. There's this whole thing about what they say, black famous or hood famous. White folks don't know who the hell they are. And then we have, you know, the people that are hella famous. What's her name? Taylor Swift. You know, that black folks don't know. So celebrities are not universal because they have to be aspirational to, and there are some crossover transcendent celebrities, of course. But so when you look at somebody who is a celebrity, Kanye West, somebody who's being used by God to show out, I say this: I go to places where there are large gatherings of black, or just large gatherings. But generally, I go to places with large gatherings of black. I live in the United States. If you ain't got no tactical armor, bulletproof vest, you best stay clear of large gatherings. Even though they got us thinking black people shooting, but white folks, you liable to get shot for just being outside. Whereas black folks, if they gunning for you, it's because you didn't fucked up the package or some wearing the wrong color shit. But anyway, I digress. Whenever I look at a phenomenon, I like to look back. Like when I went to the premiere of the Black Panther, where they first showed the Black Panther movie here in Chicago. It was at a local black-owned theater, and my wife got tickets from a state senator. There's a state senator. We worked on his mayoral campaign, and worked on his policies related to reforming the bail, demonetize the bail system to take the money, the ability to pay, and your worthiness to get out of jail pending trial, to separate those two. So anyway, he was like, hey, I got a bunch of tickets, dozens of tickets. And so we not only went, took the whole family, and took a friend of mine's kids. We had mad tickets to see the one of the first showings of Black Panther. And when I sat there, I looked, when they were setting up, I kept looking back at the audience. And when I talk about fixated, for black people to see black superheroes in such grandeur and see a black society from a continent, the dark continent, the poor continent, and just really let me see, like, the people were engrossed, you know. But anyway, we know the phenomenon of that movie. But celebrity is all about the aspirations of the people more so than the talent of the celebrity. So literally, a multinational corporation or studio or a political party could turn me into a celebrity tomorrow. I operate in pretty much obscurity. And some right-wing pundit could make me an overnight celebrity, either through fame or infamy. All they have to do is in some way create the narrative that I have achieved something or I possess something that the masses of our people. Amos Wilson clearly stated that King hit that point of fame when he said he had a dream of us walking hand in hand with white people. And that touched something deep in black folks. Certain black people. There are a lot of black people like, I don't want to touch these mothers. How you going to rape and pillage and enslave and oppress my people for generations? And then I don't want to hold your hand. But a large portion of black people to this day, you say, I have a dream. They're all familiar with that shit. And that's how you become a celebrity. You know? So anyway. And it ain't just money. It doesn't have to be money. It could be masculinity. It could be masculine. Oh, this guy seems like a really tough, manly man, a man's man. Andrew Tate. So that's what a celebrity is. And that is a byproduct of irrational. It is irrational for us to even like these people or to look up to these people. We should have disdain for these people. They should not be able to sell us sneakers, overpriced sneakers. They should not be able to get us to vote for this person or vote. You know, how the fuck an Ice Cube, a man who literally made his money being a propagandist for the CIA. Because you doing crack rap in the 80s, you are a Pied Piper for mass incarceration. And then just 20 years later, you're talking about you're writing policies to save the black community when you ain't even lived amongst regular black folks. You said, what did Ice Cube say? I've been making rap dollars since the 10th grade. You've been a celebrity since you were a child. How the fuck you even know what we going through? Again, because again, you are literate, but you are illiterate because all you know about the hood is what your landlady might or your servants might tell you. Anyway, so celebrity, the fact that celebrity culture is so powerful and prominent is a byproduct of irrationality. The lack or absence of critical thinking, the presence of menticide, where we can't even determine who's on our side or who isn't. We don't know what's real. Snoop Dogg back in 2017 made a music video where he had Trump dressed up like a clown. He had a politician dressed, or a guy dressed up. Let me see. Let me see if I can find this. I ain't gonna play it. I just want to find it still. Right here it is. This is from 2017. Sorry. Oh, that's wrong. Let me show you this. With this celebrity shit. Okay? So this is the video that he made, that he was condemned for, where he was rapping, called Trump and then shot Trump in the head, right? Let's just go into Google and put in Snoop Trump. And somebody started off. He said, I got nothing but love for Trump. Nothing but love and respect. So these motherfuckers don't stand for shit. He don't love them hoes. How do I get this off? He don't love them hoes. He don't love our sisters. But he loves and respects Trump. I don't think I've ever heard him say, I love and respect African people, or I love, but y'all, some of y'all gonna find, oh, he said in a Billboard interview, he love and respect black people. I said I ain't heard it. I didn't say he never said it. So these motherfuckers don't stand for shit. And we think it's cute and clever how he can be a gangster crip and do a cooking show with Martha Stewart. But that's really a slap in the face. You cooking crack for your black community, or promoting cooking crack, and you cooking, and then that shitty ass meme that had one of these, it was him and Martha Stewart on the set of their show, and it was like, one of these people have a felony and one doesn't. And I'm like, one of these people promoted genocidal lifestyle, murder rap and murder culture, invalidated every negative stereotype this system ever put out about us, showing up at award shows, from pimpdom to gang banging. And what's really ironic with Snoop saying, I don't love these hoes, when Snoop is the biggest hoe. I mean, this dude, from selling Skechers to Bollywood movies, if the money is right, he shows up and will get butt ass and do any. This dude, man, for money, for the love of money, he will do something strange. If do something strange for a bit of change was a person. Snoop is everywhere all the time. There was some guy that compiled. And we celebrate, oh, Snoop getting that paper. Snoop getting that paper. And Snoop will go anywhere and do anything for them if the money's right. And people will be like, oh, he getting that bag. And those same people will talk about, and don't even let me tell you about the Hindu fascism, the Hindu nationalism. Hindu nationalism. Ain't no love for African people over there. In India, especially under the Modi government. Let me not even tell you about capitalist, racist, neo-colonial India. Don't let me tell you about Indians in South Africa during apartheid, Gandhi's racist ass. Don't let me tell you about Uganda and Indians, as if Snoop give a fuck. All I'm trying to say is Snoop is a hoe, and he'll do something strange for a little bit of change. Yeah, his daughter had a stroke. And everybody talking about how his daughter was riding around in a Corolla and his daughter didn't have money to fix her car. And everybody was like, that's good. Snoop shouldn't get weirdo. Y'all, some weirdos. But anyway, celebrity culture is a byproduct of mass irrationality. I've always said, I've never seen nobody dunk a motherfucking ball or spit a motherfucking rhyme that will make me betray myself. Class consciousness and revolutionary ideology should relegate these celebrities to where they belong. Entertainers who can be picked up in our leisure time and put down when it's time to do work. But another form of irrationality I see emerging is immigration and xenophobia, where I'm seeing black people align with the right-wing racist, neo-Nazis, Republican Party, libertarian fascists, and all these other reactionary groups, because we're being told by certain elements of black leadership that the immigrants are coming here to do terrorism, the immigrants come here to take our jobs, that the immigrants are a threat because they're going to displace and replace us. And so now that I'm seeing black people support the border, and there's this prominent black TikToker, I don't remember her name, but she puts out these TikToks about how the border and misinterpreting the border conflict, saying they want to cut the razor wire and Biden has open borders and we need to arm ourselves. And black people, we need to arm ourselves, as if our communities aren't saturated with guns. And that's another thing. This whole gun culture is another form of irrationality, menticide. And so black people are now getting mad about trespassing on the plantation, and black people are spewing and advocating for xenophobia and American nationalism, closed borders, reactionary ideologies. This whole LGBTQ and transgender scapegoating. Now I don't even have to go into that. I mean, from there was a whole many of them have been exposed as either engaging in or facilitating and covering up domestic abuse. They would tell us, Irritated Genie, the Black Straight Pride movement, even Dr. Fubar, who was going to open an all-boys schools to protect our sons from effeminization, and now they're all being exposed for the grift that was. And so, the reality is the right wing and Republican platform didn't have anything to run on. None of their policies were popular, so they said we're going to create a threat, and it's not even the gender issues, but now they've mutated that into talking about litter boxes in schools, and children are allowed to go to schools and identify as cats and dogs, and the schools put litter boxes. And some of the most popular, from the Fox News to the number one podcast, Joe Rogan show, have promoted this lie. And I see black people picking up this lie, people identifying as animals, and they never name the schools. And then they say, well, a friend of mine's child knows someone who goes to a school. So this scapegoating of other vulnerable groups that allows you to target populations who had nothing to do with your oppression as being the source or the greatest threat. Talking about immigrants taking your job. Nobody takes a job. You'll never hear anybody go somewhere and say, hey, I got good news. What? I took a job. I took a job today. We only use that taking job shit in reference to vulnerable refugees, vulnerable populations. They never, because we know that jobs aren't taken, they are given, granted to you. And even if you get a job, that job doesn't belong to you. The owner of the means of production, the CEO, the board of directors, the manager, they control that job, and they can snatch that job from you as quickly as they gave it to you. And so even it's irrational to talk about somebody. And every other country understands that if you want to control jobs going to those who are not eligible to work them, you have to focus. If the U.S. government or local state government said tomorrow, if you hire people who are ineligible to work, you will lose your charter. If you hire people who are underage or who do not have the proper documentations, or if you hire minors and you work them over time, or you work them night shift, or you have them doing jobs which their age or status restricts them from working, you will lose your charter, you will lose your business license, you will pay fines, and you will face criminal prosecution. That would end immigrants taking our job over fucking night. And the countries that do that, I got a cousin who went to work in France, and nobody said nothing about taking a job, because France says if you hire somebody, because she was always complaining, she had to pay taxes in New York City and had to pay taxes in France, so she had to pay taxes in two governments, and she had all this paperwork, and she had to constantly go down to the Foreign Workers Bureau or whatever they have over there, but it wasn't her doing it. Her employer was like, listen, if you don't have your shit right, they will come in. They're not going to arrest you. They're not going to deport you. They're going to take the manager. They're going to take the head of human resources. They're going to take the owner to jail, or the board of directors to jail. And you never hear anybody say, oh, they take our jobs. And the reason they get the jobs over citizens, like I had a friend who was convicted of a felony, served his time, got out of prison. This dude had a college degree. And he was like, well, I'm a felon. And he went down to work day labor. He went to work day laborers. It used to be day labor shops all over the place. This is back in the 90s. And nobody would pick him up. The trucks would back up to the day labor place, and they let all the Mexicans on. They let the Filipinos on. They let everybody on and tell him fall back. And he's like, why won't you hire me? I'm skilled. I'm English. Is because I have a criminal record. And the guy was like, no, everybody here has a criminal record. You wouldn't be out here. He's like, because if this guy gets injured, if this guy makes a fuss, he doesn't have paper. He has no incentive to go to the police to complain. I might drive and be like, I ain't got money. I know I promised you each $100, but I only got $30 each. Who are you going to call the police? So migrant workers are hired because they are easy to exploit. They're willing to work hard. They have strong family values. These people, they work hard. They're willing to work. They got strong family values, whereas American workers are lazy. Irrational. So this whole thing, immigrants, celebrities, scapegoating transgender people with the exact same rhetoric. This whole bathroom debate, they were talking about they didn't want lesbians in public bathrooms and public gyms back in the 60s. Oh, the lesbians, and the predatory male homosexual, where literally there was a gay panic defense, that if a gay man approached you in a way you that made you feel uncomfortable and you took his life or assaulted that gay man, you could literally say the fact that he was gay, you could argue that justified your aggression, because hey, he might have treated me like I treat women. But there was no male panic defense, whereas a woman say, well, if you look at the stats of rape and abuse and sexual assault and homicides between men and women, and when a man said, hey, you looking hot, or hey, hot mama, let me get them 7 digits, I shot him because I had a heterosexual panic defense. But there was legitimate, that they finally outlawed that on paper, just like they outlawed stop and frisk on paper. Right? So anyway, you will see in these various arenas that if you engage in radical, rational analysis, the conclusions about how to engage with these issues The immigration issue is not the United States does not have an immigrant problem. The United States does not have an immigrant crisis. The United States has an imperialism problem. The world has a U.S. imperialism crisis. And the immigration issue is a direct byproduct of U.S. imperialist aggression across Latin America, the Caribbean, Central America, and abroad. The United States knows how to identify, process, and integrate refugees. Just ask the Ukrainians. There is no predatory, there is no drag queen problem. There is no transgender oppression where the transgenders are taking over. There's no transgender or gay takeover. There is a gay scapegoating, transgender scapegoating, where these people are being targeted by a powerful institutions, individuals, and political party that has no other policies. So they will create a false problem to protect you from. I have to vote Republican. I don't support their tax policies, their immigration policies, their economic policies, their social welfare policies, their refusal to even acknowledge student loan forgiveness, their economics. I don't support anything, but they're the only ones that are going to stop my child from having to urinate in the litter box when they go to school. So they're protecting you from shit that doesn't exist, and they're gaining ground. Because they have people like Dave Chappelle and others who also perpetuate the scapegoating and the mythology of the LGBTQAI takeover. Religion, just go look at the show from last week. I done said all I had to say about religion, and I just need to let that simmer. Y'all know I gotta face, I'm just religion, the prominence of religion. In most other colonizer nations, and most other nations that have a high level of economic stability, affluence, education, religious belief, and the attendance and adherence to religious codes is dropping precipitously. The United States is one of the few settler colony or colonizer nations that still has high level of people who publicly profess their belief in the supernatural or the higher power, and church higher relatively, even though it's going down in relationship to UK, in relationship to France, even fucking Italy, the home of the papal states, the home of the Roman Catholic Church, the fucking rancid womb that birthed Western Christianity. They even have lower rates of church affiliation and attendance. You go to Italy, people look at, like, I went on a tour of this old, and it's so funny how they talked about the pagans and the wretched African animist. Because I went into this old 1,000-year-old church in Naples, and it was nothing but some, and it's so weird where they got black people being ashamed of voodoo and the skulls and the chicken bloods. That church was full of corpses. That church had skulls embedded in the walls, and they even talk about how the flesh is rotten, right? So in Christianity, humans are inherently sinful, right? So when they buried the noble people, they would not want to bury the flesh. So they would take their bodies into the basement of the church, like just a half step down, not even the basement. Like, here's the pulpit. You walk about 15 feet from the pulpit, and you go down about 4 steps, and there was these inside pits, and they would just drop the bodies in there and let the bodies rot. So you go to Sunday service in the late 1700s, and you can smell the rotting flesh of the noblemen and noble women rotting, wafting up into the cathedral. That's why they had, you see how in Catholicism they have incense, and the incense and fragrances are so important. That had nothing to do with the divine. It had everything to do with, it was some major funk coming. You read stories about how Africans would detail how long before the slave ships arrived at dock, you could smell them far, far, far away because of the stench of the slavers. And so then when the bodies rotted enough, and if you ever seen a corpse that's just left out,
the soft tissue starts to liquefy, the organs liquefy, and then they would have these people that would come in and literally rip the tendons and the remaining muscle tissues from the bones, and they would literally by their bare hands say these prayers and just like rip the remaining flesh from the bones. And so the coffins, if you look in these noblemen coffins, the coffins are about like this, literally this big, and they have crowns and all these jewels and scepters and royal cloaks over the coffins. And the coffins were so little because they only buried the bones because the flesh is wicked, and they just left the flesh down there and they throw another body on top of that shit. I don't know why I shouldn't have went all into that. But even in a place like that go way back, what did he say? What you call it? I mean, Southern Europe and Christianity go back like car seats and middle-aged men hairlines. Even there, they have lower people professing belief and attending religious ceremonies. Like I was saying, I went on a tour there. It was an archaeological. It wasn't a priest or a nun who took us on that tour. It was a researcher and an archaeologist that took us on a tour of that church. Right? And when we were leaving, one of the nuns came out with a basket like, would you like to make a donation? I'm like, I've already, my ancestors been made. I should be extracting. I should take one of them fucking gold scepters, not be giving you shit. So I said, I'm sorry, but no. And she was mad. Boy, that whole thing of the kindly nun, that's some bullshit. But anyway, I digress. The more irrational, the more religion. And I'm sorry. If you believe world made in 7 days, there's some supernatural divine power, life after death. If you believe in that, you are engaged in a rational belief system. And to the extent that that belief system influences your behaviors, your relationships, your understandings, you will be classified as in the throes of irrationality. Okay? Politics, political ideology, and platforms. You have a lot of people say, I don't like the Democrats, I don't like the Republicans. They don't like to go into specifics about the policy and the platforms. They really get mad when people try to distinguish or talk about the distinctions between the party. Because let me tell you, I have lived in red states. I grew up in a red state, Republican-dominated red state within a blue city. So the political administration in Kansas City was Democratic, but the governors and the congressmen and the senators, all Republican. That is a different organizational atmosphere in terms of organizing within that environment versus a place like New York or Illinois, where you will have a blue state, Democratic administration, city council, Democratic mayor, Democratic city state center, a Democratic. That's a whole different. It is not a utopia. You still have to organize and struggle, but it is a different environment, a different atmosphere. And if you do not understand the particularities, the methodology, the outlooks, and the techniques between these two distinct parties and these two distinct policy conflicts and where they overlap and where they diverge, and you don't accept that, you're not going to in any way conceptualize, let alone carry out any effective countermeasures. You will not be able to identify your interests and advance your interests within that environment. And I say this all the time. There's one population of people that don't need to concern themselves with the vote and with the policy implementation. And those are people engaged in active, open war against the state. If you are a guerrilla, if you are in the trenches taking a war, then don't concern yourself. But if you are subject to the policies and at any time find yourself obeying or cooperating with the laws, then you should be engaged as you organize for liberation and revolution. Also be engaged in understanding, impacting, whether it's advancing or trying to upend policies. So many of us get emotional. We talk about how the Democrats don't love us as if that's something we do want. That probably the only thing worse than the hatred of our oppressors is the love of our oppressors. Be careful what you wish for. I can't imagine a world where the Democrats truly gave a fuck about black people. Because I know to the extent that you're able to conclude that white people care about other white people, and if you know their history and how they've related and how they've interacted with each other, We don't need their love. We need oversight. You know, give me a competent bureaucrat over a loving politician any day. There's a lot of irrationality in the arena of the youth, young black youth, and education, where we talk about education and how to correct the education and how to fix the education. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to get into details that, or even the issues. There's not a day goes by of the person my age when we talk about young people. And of all people, Willie D was on here talking about Sukiyana and Sexy Red. And before, I mean, all I got to say, go listen to Gangsta of Love. Go listen to fucking, what's that, Mind of a Lunatic. It's crazy to me. Or I don't do it anymore, but at the time where they were talking about these effeminized rappers, these zesty rappers, and then I showed them the image of Tupac in a bathtub, butt naked with gold chains over his crotch. I'm like, zest and this genderqueer, gender bending shit has always been a part, or us really thinking some random performer, some random minstrel putting on a dress is somehow an affront or a threat to manhood. Let me tell you something. If a man in a dress is a threat to your identity, then you need to go on and the issue is not the man in the dress. It's some unresolved shit in you. Because I've never looked at a comedian or anybody else in a dress and been like, oh, this hurts my manhood. So, anyway, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. That's the gender issues. But there's a lot of irrationality around youth, the generational divide, this Willie Lynch lie. Willie Lynch is absolute bullshit. It was never worked and it never applied. And it will have you focusing on anytime one black person says another black person is on some bullshit and you run and say Willie Lynch, to the point where we can't even engage in discourse, let alone debate or take a stand on an ideological or principled issue and call out someone else. And everybody, every time there's any in agreement, everybody called Willie Lynch. So this generational divide, there's too much irrationality, crime and drugs. But I'm running. I'm gonna open it up. It's 8:50. But they're sitting there. I'll just run and talk. I like where we have a lot of misconception and irrationality, and a lot of our conclusions, and a lot of our solutions, and a lot of our remedies. A lot of our solutions and remedies, and a remedy is something short term. You know. If we got somebody speeding up and down the street, you can remedy that by putting up a speed bump. The speeder is still out there, but you pretty much prevented his ability to do that on your block. Whereas a solution could be confiscate the person's car or put a speed. So we have some things that require immediate remedy, and we ignore that. You can't ignore remedies in your fight for solutions, because revolution and struggle can sometimes span generations. A lot of us think white man, the first day he got to Africa, we bowed down and went to slavery and colonization. And then we stood up and said, okay, stop it. But if you really understand the process of colonization, the process of enslavement and implementing the slave system, many of these things happen over generations. But we only look at the big part, the big explosion, the big conflict, and think that's the be all end all. And what we really love to ignore is the ideological component of it. But race, ethnicity, and nationality, there's a lot of irrationality and conclusion about that. You know, where many of us want to be just focus on our black ADOS, FBI, our nationality is going to be the put that first, nationality first, and then race 15. So you got black people with U.S. citizenship and social security numbers, thinking that puts us apart from a black person who doesn't have U.S. citizenship and social security number, as if our oppressors and enemies really give a fuck about either one of us. Or we'll say, well, I'm a bloodthirsty racist. I'm a bloodthirsty racist, but you've got a U.S. citizenship and you got a social security card, so I'm not going to exercise or exert. And you also have your high value. You got a 6-figure income and generational wealth. So the ravages of racism will, and I say this all the fucking time, how many affluent, wealthy, highly educated, articulate Jews were sitting right there on the cattle car right next to, and the German citizen Jews were sitting there next to the Jews who were citizens of Poland, had little to no education and no generational wealth. Poor fucking beggars or street performers were sitting there with the articulate generational wealth. Because when these crackers, again, because white folks are more irrational than us. Man, I need to just if I had a white audience, I'd really have a lot of shit to talk about. White people's mind blown. Education, marriage, intimate relationships, and the gender roles. That is one of the dumbest ongoing debates. Wealth and entrepreneurialism as it relates to Black empowerment and Black liberation. White hegemony, capitalism, imperialism, factionalism. Many of the Black people who claim to be against the white devils or to be everything they stand for is a byproduct and born out of and aligns and resonates with the oppressors. Puritanical, conservative Black people parading as Pan-African and revolutionary, when the world they seek to create would be indistinguishable in every respect from the world we live in, except it's white Black men at the helm, as opposed to white men. Other than that, they want to keep everything fixed. You heard of the neutron bomb, the bomb that they dropped that doesn't destroy buildings, that doesn't destroy infrastructure, just get rid of the people in the area so you can move in and continue. And we've already seen this in the neo-colonial governments, where literally they would have a colonial governor in the seat of power, and they grab him by his neck and snatch him out and put Mobutu Sese Seko there, put Jomo Kenyatta there, put Nelly Mandela there, and they start to carry out and implement the same policies that the white colonial person did. Neo-colonialism. And we don't even understand that here because it's or put Barack in the seat. So those are the areas. I really can't get into how the irrationality, but more than anything, the most important thing, even more important than the books you read, is your capacity to analyze and think critically and radically. You got to be radical, because if you're just dealing with the symptoms and you allow the underlying infection to go unchecked, because and a lot of times, if you deal with the surface symptom and ignore the underlying, because that's what this whole abortion, Black women have the highest rate of abortion, per capita rate of abortion. Well, just stop them from getting abortion. Just stop it. And that will lead to higher death rates, higher levels of injury, and more harm to our youth and our women than dealing with the underlying cause of lack of resources, hyper exploitation, sexual predation, and all that other shit. But anyway, I'm gonna open this up. Question, comments, criticisms. We got 4 minutes, so let's make it swift. I'll share the link here. How has the sound been? I guess I'll go back and listen. I can't believe y'all. So you can click on the link I just shared in the comments and you can come on live, or if you can type your question. I want to show my sincerest appreciation to Mr. Faulty and ZZ Lion, who support, help sustain. If you also want to make a contribution to the BroDiallo broadcast and other efforts, you can see at the bottom of the screen, you can become a Patreon supporter, which is most ideal, but also you can make one-time contributions to CashApp or Venmo to help sustain the BroDiallo broadcast and the BroDiallo media empire. So I can get up there with, what's that dude's name? The Fox News dude. Who's the Fox News senior? Anyway, okay. Oh, got a question. Prester. Oh, Prester. I'm gonna call you Pester John, because you a pest. But I appreciate this question. It ain't a whole bunch of nothing. Without enforcement and penalties, these decisions carry no weight. They have no teeth. And you'll notice that when the International Criminal Court of Justice, when the UN makes proclamations against African nations or Caribbean heads of state, they'll send out, they'll go and arrest these individuals and take actions. So this is an empty gesture. Now, because the way politics plays out, if I was an activist, if I was engaged with the struggle, you can definitely take this to bolster your position. You can take it to bolster your justification, but it has no teeth. And the movement didn't even say call for a ceasefire. As I understand it, they simply said that Israel should take steps, or was that the UN? I don't know, these bodies, but basically telling Israel, you can continue your campaign, but you should take steps to reduce civilian deaths. So I don't put much weight behind it, to the extent that people working on the issue that haven't been moved. Maybe the best thing that could come of this, CJ, is that some Zionists might say, well, maybe we aren't the good guys. But if you're a Zionist in 2024, you pretty much, I don't think you can be moved. If it took October 7th and the atrocities that followed for you to wake up to that situation that's been going on since before I was born. But I got an auntie who's older than the nation of Israel. But I've said all that. Israel is not a chosen people. But all that to say is it's toothless. There's no enforcement. There's no means to enforce. Welcome, Taj Green. Happy to have you. But it's a good question, respectable question, Prester John. Okay, well, I've got my first live, Mr. Funko. What is it? The Yazid who reads?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. Welcome to the BroDiallo broadcast.
Absolutely. Listen, I know this chat is about irrationality. I'm okay. This all started because I found out about that Doja Cat song. I think it's just called Demon. And the reaction that Christians have to that song just made me think about like this stream and what's going on and how like they'll call things satanic even if it's Christians doing it. Like they're so lost in the sauce and it's just like ridiculous. Like it's one of those things where I know spirituality is a very important thing to people's lives, and I'm in that camp that thinks like religion is important, even though I'm an atheist. But it's just like it's so ridiculous how Christianity has Africans in. Like they'll be so lost in the value system that can't bring them anything, and it's just ridiculous. But I just wanted your thoughts on stuff like that. Just like a Christian will make something, and other Christians will call it satanic, and it's just like, what are we doing right now? We have like better things to be doing.
Well, at least it's a Christian doing it, because I kind of found out that, you know, if you're not a believer, you can't really be qualified as a heretic or a blasphemer. That's a penalty that's only leveled to people who are of the faith. But I think that it's funny to me that, because I kind of went over this in last Monday, where policing in the church, they go after everything except for the true threats and the true degenerative forces within the church. You know, prosperity gospel, the leadership. I've yet to see any prominent Christian talk about the lawsuit of the Baptist Convention for decades of sexual exploitation. Everybody's very familiar with the Catholic Church, but the Protestant Protestant organizations have also come under charge. And so I think calling a Doja Cat demonic or denouncing a Lil Nas X for twerking on Satan or dressing up like Jesus is more evidence of the inherent corruption of the Christian church and the Black church specifically, because they don't tackle. And even how the fuck can you be a Christian when your Lord and Savior was a migrant who your Lord and Savior was literally a refugee and born in a manger around a bunch of filthy animals because of their immigrant status? And when your God, you claim your God told you to welcome the stranger and to open up the stranger, and it's predominantly Christians who are locking down the border and allowing children to drown and to be shredded by razor wire as they try to make it in across this imaginary border. So, I mean, the Christians, I say it like this: I've yet to meet a Christ-like Christian.
No, I totally understand that. And oh, sorry to interrupt. My bad.
No, that's it.
Yeah, no, like I agree with all of that. I think my frustration is just that, like, there are other African spiritualities. There are other ways to express your religion, and like I've met a lot of African peoples, like in organizing or just in real life, that just like I'm not angry at the devout belief in something. I'm angry that it's like it's such a shallow value system. Like there's no like interest in any type of actual history. It's always just tit for tat gossip stuff, and just like it's just like mind numbing. There's nothing deep about the Christianity that a lot of people profess, and especially when you compare it to like other religions, whether it be like Islam or Judaism or just, again, like I said, like the African spiritualities, it's just very clear how it's a distraction. For me, I just see it too much of a psyop. Like it's something that I think is given to the masses to keep them content and kind of value very shallow things versus kind of seeking deeper knowledge. And again, none of this is tied to revolutionary values or anything like that. Like when you look at Christianity, like they'll venerate certain kinds of saints as it pertains to spirituality, but it won't, like, the fact that like there are so many Black revolutionaries in the United States who aren't venerated in religious spaces for like their history and stuff like that, I think that says a lot of how we internalize all the wrong ideas about our own history.
I think that's a good thing, actually. I think
Really?
if the churches started venerating Black revolutionaries, they will co-opt their legacies. If the Black church embraced Chairman Fred Hampton, and you started seeing pictures of Chairman Fred Hampton or Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad in the mosque, I think that because the church and institutions are much more powerful than the Black revolutionary struggles, they would do more to distort and destroy the legacy than they would to advance it. Because you can't say, well, we're going to venerate Black revolutionaries by acknowledging their work, and then I'm going to sit here and tell you about salvation from on high. Black revolutionary and Black revolutionary ideology directly contradicts what is being taught in the church. So how would they at the same time continue to teach Christian or Islamic ideology and values and dogma and venerate revolutionaries who everything they taught contradict these male chauvinist murder cults?
See, with that, I think when I mean like veneration of revolutionaries, I'm more talking about like how Haitians had their spiritual practices and how they use that to invigorate their pre-existing like anti-slavery action and stuff like that. I'm not so much talking about venerating.
Right, but the modern church of the United States calls them demonic. What the Haitians believe.
Yeah.
Vodun and honoring Orisha and ancestral worship and communing with the Orisha, the animistic practices of the Haitian Revolution are deemed demonic, and the Haitians were decapitating Christians. The Haitian revolutionaries were decapitating.
Yeah, and again, that's
so. Again, that it
my
just
bad.
doesn't.
No, I was just gonna say I Go ahead. I'll say after you. Go ahead.
No, go on. I know it sounds good on the surface, but I said,
okay.
If I saw a popular,
I was just gonna say that, like, I agree
in the U.S. start carrying around and promoting George Jackson, I think that would be a sign that we of decline, not advancement. I say this: when white people burn Black churches, it's racism. When Black people burn black churches, it's revolution.
And I agree. Like, I agree with that. I think what I'm trying to say is, I don't agree with venerating, or I want the veneration of our revolutionaries in a way of like passing down that legacy and keeping that fervor, not just spiritually, but just intellectually, philosophically, of revolution in the community. But
That won't
simultaneously,
happen to the black church.
like,
Why would we need the
or
black church?
maybe not
to do that?
simultaneously, but I think black people should embrace traditions that are seen as satanic or demonic because they are actually just African. Like, I think that's important. And like, I think this goes back to like my initial thing of why it's so frustrating to me that Christianity is the way it is in the African community, because it's just another form of anti-blackness. Like an
Right.
inability to actually internalize our own traditions that are actually revolutionary.
But how could it be anything else?
What as far as religion or just like the status
The
quo?
black church. How can the black church be anything other than what it was created to be?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't agree with like what the colonial idea of the black church is. Like, I'm not supporting that. But clearly black people can get together and have their own form of spirituality. And I feel like that's something that isn't articulated in the community. I feel like we are funneled into just like the stereotypical Abrahamic traditions, and that is it. And there's no expansion into what do Africans actually believe historically and collectively in revolution and stuff like that. But I feel like this I don't want to hold on to your time too much. It's just a personal frustration for me. Like, there are clearly black people I bet who do practice those quote black magics because they're African. And I hate the fact that they exist and they're seen in such a negative light, despite the fact that they can actually internalize the revolutionary history. And then you just have all these other black people who they'll carry that cross and go nowhere, just calling everybody satanic, and it doesn't mean anything.
Right. Well, I appreciate you calling in. I'm sorry. Hello?
But yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate
I'm still
it.
here.
But
Yeah,
I
I
got
appreciate
other
it.
people waiting and some other questions. But, I understand what you're going for. I just don't agree with the vehicle for getting there. Let me just say that. I agree. I would like to get to the same place as you, but I don't want to take that vehicle. I don't think we have to go through the black church for veneration of our revolutionary heroes, or for the actualization of our revolutionary culture or our traditional African culture.
Yeah, and I think on that point we agree. I don't think it's the black church.
All of that.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah, I don't think it's the black church either. I think
culture, Yahtzee, just like in Western culture, the more people get quote unquote free, the less they are invested in the religion. These ministers,
Mhm.
if they were truly good people, they would be working themselves out of a job. They should go to the pulpit and say, listen, we cannot look to the divine or the supernatural. We must only look to each other. So let's shut this fucking place down and reopen it as a school or whatever else and stop with it. But they can't do that. But anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Esme. I appreciate you waiting.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Alright. I'm just more so looking for advice, and it's not really about the topic of, the discussion, which thank you so much for having this. Every time I listen to you, I get more and more informed. And everything you say is so true. But for me specifically, especially my circumstances, working at a job that I don't really care about to make this, capitalist company a lot of money, and then having these ideas and how to benefit my community, but feeling so exhausted afterwards. and also being, autistic and ADHD. And so those set of like restrictions and like what I can do in the real world. And I feel like I'm confined to social media, but in that way it's still kind of like I feel like I'm screaming at the void to, and I have like ideas like I feel like we should, have mutual aid for Black people, African people. I feel like that's something that I feel like would take away power from these institutions and like actually put our collective funds to make sure there's not a homeless Black person on the street, like because I don't think the system is going to do that for us. Like, why don't we organize ourselves, especially in the digital realm? But that's just what I feel.
Well, I'll try to work backwards from that, where you talk about why we don't organize ourselves. There is quite a bit of organizing, but a lot of times because of the way the system is structured, that organizing doesn't get acknowledged unless it gets mainstream attention or some celebrity acknowledgement. There was this thing when I moved here to Chicago, there were so many people working so hard dealing with the violence, the homicide rate here. And they've made some progress. But when the white cameras came and they did the interrupters, all of a sudden everyone was talking about the violence here, even though there were people working long before the camera showed up the white folks showed up to make a documentary, and they're continuing the work. And there's a lot of Black people who say, well, whenever a cop shoots a Black person, we protest. But what do? We don't protest when a Black person shoots another Black person. And those individuals are ignorant of the enormous amount of work going on within the juvenile prisons and the adult jails and in the streets of interruption. So there is a lot of work going on that is not acknowledged, but it is not in any way of the intensity and scale that it needs to address the problem. And the biggest obstacle to getting our organizing up to scale and intensified is Menticide, what I'm talking today. I think there's a lot of energy put into things that are considered to be positive or revolutionary, building multi-generational wealth, this whole prosperity gospel in the Black church, and thinking the Black church is a vehicle that we can use to advance our interests, putting the wrong type of emphasis and faith in electoral politics and not engaging. So a lot of our effort is squandered as a byproduct of being irrational, not having revolutionary analysis or radical analysis, and not having a revolutionary objective. Many of our objectives are individualistic, pull yourself up and get yours, secure the bag. And many of our objectives are reactionary or maladaptive. So instead of challenging and destroying the systems of capitalism and white hegemony, we come up with ways on how to thrive within the system. So that's one of the biggest obstacles. And what you said about on a personal scale, working and things, the fundamental thing every Black person should do, aside from everything else, is make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of our people. And if you do an internal audit or assessment and say, listen, I got this much time, this much money, I have these particular talents, and you can really make a strong impact 1 month out of the week, when depending on where your interests are in terms of politics and platform development, in terms of mothers, in terms of housing issues, in terms of food and nutrition and chronic disease, you'll be surprised. Someone who has 2 hours one weekend a month and only has 2 hours on one Saturday or one Sunday a month, what you can really do. And don't ever think that the guy that's out there on the front lines or the sisters that's out there 24/7 365, that because you can't do what they're doing or do it at the level they're doing it, that your contribution, and if it is social media, If you're saying, hey, I'm going to take time because there's so much noise and there's so much nonsense being spewed across so many platforms, I'm going to take time to curate information's a blog or social media's page. I'm going to curate this page and put out really, truly academic, sussed out, relevant information. I'm going to share quality insights. There are so many pro-black people out here sharing shit from Jordan Peterson and right-wing reactionary. I see some black people sharing PragerU. So if you say, listen, I'm going to find progressive independent artists, poets, rap artists, painters, designers, and I'm just going to boost their shit and share their links. Or I'm going to find coaching political analysis. Or I'm going to go to the RNC page and police the RNC. Or I'm just going to cop watch, and I'm going to, just keep ahead in the local journalist and just all the atrocities of my local police station. I'm going to be a filter for that. So there's minuscule things you can do in your free time to make a positive contribution to just aspirations. And I don't remember who said it, but somebody said one of the good things about everything being so fucked up. Now I remember who said it, but I don't want to quote his name because he's now fallen off and went right wing. But he said the good thing about everything being so fucked up is that no matter what you're into, what gets you off, you can find a way to do good through that arena. Yes.
Okay, I'm still here. I'm just like taking it all in, and I definitely agree with you. I think sometimes, like, I think of all the issues that are facing our community, and it just feels so overwhelming. And then especially like paying attention to international politics and like considering myself more of a Pan-African, also being Haitian Dominican, immigrant, but like came here as a baby, so I feel like I do have like more of an international like perspective on things, and I think there's severely like this lack of like unity between black people within the diaspora, but like irregardless of that, like what you're saying is so valid, and I do have to remind myself like, hey, I'm just a person, and like let me just do this, or let me just post this on social media, let me just do that, and what I can do. And I did want to touch on one more thing, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned distractions and like how I think, and I've been watching Black Power Media, which is how I found you. And I think I was watching something, I don't know how long ago you guys did that video, but it was talking about how basically the Black Power movement was basically kind of co-opted by like Black capitalist movement, and like making propping up like Black entrepreneurs, and like I think it was like they're saying that this was done through the Democratic Party, and I'm not gonna vote for Biden.
Bless your heart.
And so I feel like.
Did you vote for him 4 years ago?
Yes, I did, because I thought
I'm going to retract that blessing. I'm taking it back.
Why?
No. Okay, hey, it's better to learn. People who have learned shit are more precious than people who already know shit. I mean,
I voted for Bernie. I was a delegate for Bernie in Florida.
Okay, then bless your heart again.
But I obviously voted for Biden because he won the nomination. And I'm really upset at hearing white allies talking about, oh, we have to vote for Biden because of harm reduction, or because the alternative is going to be worse for people of color. And I feel like that's so condescending and insulting.
Yes, true.
What are your thoughts on that?
The alternative will be worse, but they're acting as though that Biden and Trump are the only choices. So that's actually not true. The alternative can be much better if you vote for third party. So I voted third party in the last presidential election, I'll be voting third party next one. So you say, well, you act as though there's only one alternative.
They don't want to acknowledge. I feel like there's something really annoying with the Democratic Party, or like people who consider themselves liberals, because it's like they force us into this and back into the system, like back into neoliberalism. Like it, in a way, it's like they're like, okay, I know he's horrible, but he's our only choice. But like you mentioned,
He's not the only
not.
choice, though. That's just factually false.
But they think of it like who's viable. And they're really like institutionalists. Really.
Well, you have to educate them. You simply tell them, electoral politics, you don't vote for who will win, you vote for who you want to win. This is not a casino. You're not trying to pick the winner. This is not a horse race. You're not trying to pick a winner. So it doesn't matter whether or not your candidate wins. You're not voting for a winner. You're voting for the candidate and the policies that you support.
And earlier today, I was literally wondering, like when I was thinking about electoral politics and like realizing these major parties are never going to have our best interests. Why don't we have our own Black party within the states where, we at least have a seat at the table. We have like a representative within this whatever system. I know it's all flawed, but why isn't there like an organized Black like party like established? And I know there's been attempts, and I know I'm very ignorant to those attempts, but it's just some thoughts. I don't want to keep you, but yeah, that's just what I was thinking earlier. But yeah.
I have to say, I think that a Black party in this system would be a waste of effort. It's better to create a Black bloc vote more so than a Black party. And again, our concerns are well above and beyond U.S. politics. So it would be better if we formed a revolutionary Black organization or a revolutionary Black party that is independent of the U.S. political cycles, as opposed to a Black political party that is tied within and fully vested in the U.S. political. So the Black Panther Party, even though they fielded candidates, they had Black Panthers run for mayor and other elected policies. They were a revolutionary party that operated on a global scale, as opposed to a political party that operated within the confines of the U.S. political cycle. So a Black political party would be inadequate to speak to our issues.
100%. I definitely agree with that. Thank you so much for.
All right. Thank you for chiming in, Esme. I hope you continue to tune in and engage.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
And hey, listen, your contribution, no matter how infrequent and small, is a contribution.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Some good conversations, a little bit over the time, way over the time. Let me just speed run through these. Pester John pestering me again. What's Diallo's position on Africa selling arms to Saudi Arabia during its genocidal campaign? Well, I fully support. What the fuck you think my positions are? See, this is a question you shouldn't have to ask. But one thing I would like encourage people to understand: the South African military and arms industry is private. It is not the state. They are privatized, and it is relatively large because it was funded by the Israelis and set up by the Israelis. Remember, before Mandela had it dismantled, South Africa had a nuke. So Israel is a proxy state of the U.S., and the U.S. and Israel was a proxy state of. And South Africa was a proxy state of the Zionist state. And so much of and because Nelly Mandela was treasonous, number one, and he was a reformist and not a revolutionary, he did not transfer the wealth and he did not transfer the economic infrastructure. So the mines, the arms industry, and all the other technologies and privately owned mega farms, just like in Zimbabwe, they were continued to be in the hands. The land and resources did not change hands. So the multinational and privatized industries, including the arms industries, are still in the hands of the white minority. And they serve the interests of the white minority and the international white capitalist class. So I oppose it. I think that the arms industry in South Africa should be nationalized, and they should begin to armed revolutionary and anti-colonial struggles within the African continent. But people like Nelly Mandela and Zuma betrayed the struggle. And so I think it's bad. Thumbs down on that, as if you didn't know. The evangelicals in the United States are largest Zionists, and they support everything Israel does. That is absolutely true. Christian Zionism is something we really have to understand. There would be no Israel without Christian Zionism and Christian support. There would be no capacity for them to carry out this genocidal campaign if not for Christian Zionists. Genocide Joe, Jim Crow Joe Biden, he is a devout Catholic and a Christian Zionist. And if you go into the prophecies of the Christianity, Israel must be established, the temple must be rebuilt, and that will herald the second coming of the Christ. And the second coming of the Christ and the rapture and all of that can only come as a result of Israel successfully completing. So this got more to do with just money and arms. This is a holy war. This is yet another crusade. And all Christians are a part of this. So if you're a Christian and I'm anti-Israel, I mean, you should be anti-Christianity too, because Zionism and Christianity are incestuous kin. Everyone knows the plight of black men in the U.S. You were talking to somebody else. You weren't talking to me. Do I recommend reading George Jackson? I absolutely do. Blood in My Eye and Soledad Brothers, the prison letters of George Jackson. Absolutely do. What's your position on? Oh, okay. So you're just re-asking the question. So those are the final questions. I'm going to sign out. Thank you. Oh, no. I didn't say no. Didn't nobody say that. Don't nobody think that. Don't be like that. Believe you me, if you sounded ignorant, ask me, I would call you ignorant because I ain't got no good sense either. So believe you me, if I thought you sounded ignorant, I would say those words because I just don't know. So no, I don't think you sounded ignorant. Don't be like that. So that's it. I'm gonna wrap this up. I appreciate everybody from tuning in. Sorry, somebody said the background music was too loud. Please like, share, subscribe, support. Woo. Share the BroDiallo show throughout. Get the algorithm going on my behalf. Share it with your lovers, enemies, allies, cousins, and kinfolk. And I'll see y'all next Monday with the next broadcast of the BroDiallo. And check us out Wednesday. Me and Skip Coon, we're going to be live and direct. Radical Friday. I'm back with